All right, so we're at about 2:20, so I'm going to get started. Before I even dive into any of the slides, who here is a little bit worried, like a little existential dread about LLMs, AI, their jobs, the future, your kids? Okay, not the only one, but not everybody here. Good for you if you don't experience existential dread on a daily basis. But for the rest of us, I just want to take a deep breath because it's going to be okay. Ready? All right, it's going to be okay. Software is, I believe, fundamentally going to change. The way that we wrote code a year ago, the way that we wrote code 5 years, 10 years ago, it is going to change. We've been through this before. We've gotten past this before. We got past this 30 years ago when coding went from a brand new bleeding edge art into the refined, creative, but also disciplined endeavor that we have today. And I feel like we're at a moment, and I want to talk through some examples. So I've written a fair amount of code, so I've got like 260 or so repositories on my GitHub. I've written very highly used apps, so this is a little tiny app that I wrote that's used by several million developers. It tells you how to go from version X to version Y in a software framework called Angular. And then I've built hundreds of thousands of lines of code that no one uses. This is a little game I built. So I always see an inverse. Like the more work I put into something, the less people use it. But maybe that's just my problem. So my name is Stephen Fluin. I am the vice president of product at a company called HeroDevs that does end-of-life open source support. But here today I'm talking a lot about my personal experience. I'll bring some of the work experiences in. I'm also what's called a Google developer expert for Angular. So I've been certified by Google as an expert in this web technology. I was out at Google Cloud Next a couple weeks ago, and I was also formerly on the Angular team at Google, being one of the leads for kind of how we built and shipped this framework called Angular. If you're looking for me on any social media, it's Stephen Fluin, and on Mastodon I've got my own developers.live server. So we talked about these apps. Those were hand-coded, artisanal apps. This is how I've written almost all the software for the last 30 years. But something kind of different happened in about May of last year, so at about a year, where I wanted to put up, we have this event that I co-host called DevFest MN, and we didn't have a photo gallery. We weren't selling the event on like what is it actually like to be at this event. So I have some photos. I want to put a photo gallery together. And I thought, well, I've been playing around with LLMs a little bit. Let me give this a try. And so I said, hey, build me a photo gallery. Here's the photos. Go. And it basically did it perfectly. So this is the photo, like this is exactly the design that it came up with, the layout. You click on the photos, they pop up, and I reviewed all the code, and it was good. It was good enough. It worked. There were no major problems. It hadn't hallucinated. It didn't introduce any bugs. It didn't introduce any big anti-patterns. I didn't break the rest of the app. It was performant, and it worked. And this was like kind of a very eye-opening moment for me where I said, oh, wow, this is a real thing. Because I'd been skeptical for a long time. Right? I was expecting us to get to a local maxima of AIs, LLMs are this good, and then humans are going to always have to carry the rest of the burden. But for me, on that day, building that feature, it was easy, it was fast, and it just worked. And so I started using LLMs more and more. Over the last year, I've been building more and more applications and shipping them to production in ways that add value to my life. So here is a simple application. I am a big fan of the kind of Stoicism philosophy and the Stoics. And so I wanted an app on my phone or a notification every day at 8 a.m. that gave me a new Stoic meditation. I thought, hey, that's a cool idea. I know there's apps that I could go pay $4 or $5 to go do that every month. Obviously, they have a subscription. They want me to pay. But I just said, hey, what if I just use what I know about the LLMs and I ask for it? So I asked it to build this little Stoic app. So I could have built this by hand easily. But there's a part of the API I'd never actually touched before. I'd never touched push notifications before. Has anyone built a push notification before? No, like this is not a thing that you have to build in every single application. It's a new domain with a bunch of complex servers, a bunch of complex permissioning systems. And I just said, hey, I want it to have, actually I first asked, what sort of tool should I use for push notifications? I said, oh, hey, this Firebase tool can do this pretty well. And so I said, sure, use Firebase. And so this app is live, stoic.fluent.io. You can go in, I had the LLM create a bunch of sub-agents. It mapped out 365 days of content. And now I get a nice little Stoic meditation delivered to me on my phone every single day. I made it public. I made it so anyone can go in and use it. But I really only care about it for myself. And this is a big mental model shift of if these LLMs can get good enough and fast enough and cheap enough, you can build apps for yourself that an audience of one is enough. right? This is a new mental model paradigm where we're used to building apps that maybe hopefully have thousands or millions of users, but a lot of people think that this is going to flip on its head, where the experience that really needs to be built is the one for you. If you're building an application for you, and if the companies and these tools and the services are all coming into your interface and giving you something that solves your problems, that's at the end of the day what we want as humans, right? Like, I don't want the same Google Calendar interface that everyone else has. I need a Google Calendar interface that works for how I work and how I think. And so this is an example of that. Another one is my kids have started getting into Pokemon cards. Does anyone like Pokemon cards? No, someone had a Pokemon backpack in the last section. But so, okay, the thing is, it's very hard to know what to buy, right? There's scalpers. This is like a gambling marketplace for a lot of people. And I just wanted my kids to have a little bit of cardboard. And so I built an app to help me track and figure out what should I be buying so I don't get ripped off again. And so this is an app that actually, it built a web crawler. It goes and it crawls every hour a few different pricing pages, figures out a price, and then shows it to me. So any day, if I want to go figure out, hey, what should I go buy for my kids, or if I want to give grandma a recommendation, I can send her this site, and she can say, oh, I'll just hit the cheapest one. So this, again, solves a problem for me, and it's a billion-dollar market. I think Pokemon's like one of the most expensive or most valuable IPs in the world now. Hopefully this is valuable to other people. My wife is a huge hockey fan. Did anyone watch round one of the NHL finals? Okay. So I have never built hardware, but I really like the idea of building like electronic circuits and like having something physical in the world. And so I had an LLM actually create for me a ESP32 set of code that would go out, check hockey scores, and whenever the Wild won, it would flash green. And whenever the opposing team won, it would flash red, right? And then I 3D printed a little box and I put it in. And I had to learn a little bit of ESP32. I had to learn a little bit of this. But I didn't have to go and become an expert in those ecosystems. I could build something I never could have built before because of my reliance and my relationship that I'm building in terms of being able to control and trick the LLM into giving me what I want. And what I've noticed is a lot of people around me are starting to do this too. So I had a friend who built a personal website for herself. And she had a blog in that. And she was using it entirely via LLMs. And at first I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then I started reviewing the code. And I don't know if you see this, but we've got 3 index.html files. And that was what was like. She had an index.html file for every single page of her site. So repeated on every page was the header, the footer, the contents list, all these sort of things. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible because that's not the pattern. We as software developers, you don't repeat yourself. But then I had a moment where I'm like, okay, maybe it's okay. Maybe if the LLM is going to be responsible for it and updating everything, maybe that's fine. I did ultimately come around and say, no, that's bad because of context and cost. Like the LLM should be, like, at the end of the day, there's a reason we build software a certain way, right? Because you can't think about these problems, right? If she has 100 or 1,000 posts, the LLM's going to miss some, right? The LLM cannot do a perfect job across thousands of files, right? This is why we build systems. This is why we think about things more architecturally. Anybody know what these are? Punch cards. So this is how we used to put software into computers. You would figure out what your code was in assembly. You would punch it into little cards. And you would have stacks and stacks and stacks of these. They put the line across so that when you drop it all over the floor, you can put it back in order. Because the order matters, obviously, if your code's executing in the wrong order. I think, and I'm getting more and more confident every day, that typing and manually writing all of your code is going this way. In the same way that all of us think this is ridiculous and you would never go back to punch cards ever again.
I was like, you're going to replace it with punch card.
Oh, you thought LLMs are going to create punch cards?
Well, no, I was thinking that by that. Like, software's going this way. I'm like,
No. So software, much like we abandoned the punch card, I believe software development is going to abandon us manually typing all the code into our IDE. So the way that I'm going to go through this talk is I'm going to go through it in 4 sections. First, I want to talk about kind of what's the state of the world. Then I want to give you tips on how do you get started with a new project. Then I'm going to talk about how do we fix the mess that it's going to inevitably create. And then we'll talk about how do you make this real. Because that last 20% of the work is 80% of the work. So to actually kick off the state of the LLMs for software development, we're going to do a brief little demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Claude here. And I'm going to say, build a Sudoku app. That's a really good set of requirements, right? All right, and we will see how it does in just a little bit. If you look back at the speed with which things are improving, it is ridiculous. This was a code review that Google did based on the state-of-the-art LLM coding back in 2023. And if you look through this is terrible code, right? It worked, it did what it was supposed to do, but this code was not maintainable. It was too verbose. It did things in a weird pattern. There were edge cases that weren't handled. Coding really sucked with LLMs in 2023. But today, if you ask for that same sort of function in any of the latest models, it's going to look and feel human. It will pass a code review, especially at small scale, almost every time, especially if you're giving it the skills and the help it needs to be successful. This is my 5-year-old, Alexander. He cannot code. LLMs are way better at coding than him. But he could theoretically ask for an app, right? He could say, hey, build me a Bluey website. This is my 7-year-old. He started learning Scratch. LLMs are way better than him. He's not very good at coding. It's not his fault, he's 7. But this was my intern at Google. I think that the state of LLMs today is about the state of a new college grad intern, where they know how to code, they know what words to use, they don't know about architecture, they don't know about structure, they don't know about how to manage data. And so I think this is one of the most important mental models, is think about this as, this is someone that can work all day, all night, tirelessly, maybe with some cost, as we kind of talked about earlier, but they can do things with help, right? You hire an intern because they actually do add value, even though you have to give them oversight and you have to give them help. And so I'm going to revisit this at several places. And I've talked to a lot of teams who actually think about this idea of like, everyone in every company is going to become a manager. You are going to have several employees on your team, your LLM agents, who you are, instead of like doing the work, you're going to be managing the work. You're going to be applying these higher order thinking principles to how these things all connect and how they all work together. I also see a bit of a bifurcated world. Like I will run into people who are AI visionaries. They're leaning in probably way too far over their skis. An example of this is I was out in Google Cloud Next. Google, apparently 76% of all their code now is written by AI. 76% of all lines of code. And I was hearing from a director who basically, he doesn't read his email anymore. He doesn't check his calendar anymore. He sits in his Gemini CLI and asks for it to give him context. Say, hey, are there any emails I need to read? Are there any emails I need to respond to? Hey, can you make sure that I'm at the right meetings this week to maximize my time? So I think that is too far. I don't think that is a good thing today. But it's really telling about a world that we might be headed towards. And then on the other side, we've got the AI skeptics, where it's like, hey, this is not going to work. We need to bring humans back, ban all AI. And I think acknowledging both these perspectives is important, right? When you talk to decision makers at companies, they are worried about being left behind. They're worried about spending money in a way that is going to be future-proof, right? That is the kind of AI forward look. And on the other side, you've got the AI skeptics who are worried about risks. They're worried about human beings. We care about how is it going to affect our social structures? And I think acknowledging and understanding both the risks and the benefits is going to give you a more holistic, inclusive understanding of these models. So let's go take a look at our little demo here. Build a Sudoku app. It's done. It works. Got some bugs here, but you can see, hey, 4. So what do we need? We have 4 over here. All right, so this actually is a call out to the randomness here. So I used Sonnet 4.6. In a previous run, it built it perfectly. It had notes features. It had everything you would actually need to build a Sudoku app. So even though this one was not perfect, as we can tell, because we're doing a random live demo, these things are capable, right? If I gave 4 words of context, build a Sudoku app, and some of the time it's building it perfectly with features that I would want on a second or third iteration usually, like notes and things like that, the ability to pick a difficulty, have a timer. And so the state of these things is very, very powerful and more powerful than I think a lot of people are aware of today.
Couldn't you have just gotten something better by saying, give me a plan to build a Sudoku app and literally...
Yes, no, so the rest of this talk is about how we can do this better. But I just want to say 4 words and you get an app, right? This was not true a year ago. I tried this many times a year ago and it sucked, right? But things are changing and things are changing very, very fast. So the one thing that I think that I heard from that Google leader that was really sitting in their LLM is nobody knows what's going on. Nobody has the answer. We don't know what the world's going to look like in 2 years, 5 years. It is almost impossible now with the rate of change of things. And so effectively, their entire mental models, I need to optimize for learning. I need to figure out how do I improve myself? How do I figure out this new world as fast as I can? Because that is what's going to set me up for success in the future, not worrying about the specific details of what's going on today, what works, what doesn't work. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the getting started. So we all want to build some software, and we want the LLM to do as much work as possible. So first, take off your software developer hat, put on your product manager hat. So the question is, what do you want your app to do? Right? Like one of the expressions I've been saying for probably 20 years is that code is just, has historically been the most succinct expression of what you want the software to do that is possible. Right? And think about that. So like, what's the minimum amount you need to say in order to set every requirement across an entire application? That's historically been code. But we're approaching a world where the assumptions that the LLMs are making based on past context are able to fill in more and more of those gaps. And so it kind of comes back to you and your creativity of what do you want your app to do? What are your goals? What's your vision? How do you think it should work? So the first thing I do every time I start vibe coding an app or building an app now is I start with a requirements document. Sometimes it's short, sometimes it's little, sometimes it's big, but there's a few things that I think you need to include. State your goal. Why are you building this app? What do you want the outcome to be? What do you want the world to look like after you've built this application? What is the user experience going to be? What are the screens? What are the pages? What are the modes? All this can change over time, but if you don't start with an understanding of what you want your app to do and start writing it down, you're going to fail. Because at the end of this happens a lot with humans as well, is if you don't think through the moments of your app, you're going to come back, you're going to get to stage 2 and say, oh no, that was wrong, right? And I fundamentally believe all software is somewhat emergent, right? This is why every team that tries to rebuild an app that they've already had fails, is because we don't know how to build an app. We know how to build towards an app. Think about your data, right? What data should my app be holding? Where could I possibly hold it? And I've got some strategies for that as well. What are the things that are going to be serving across your application? If I'm taking credit cards, how do I think about that? Am I going to be using some sort of payment processor? Am I going to be trying to roll it myself? Don't do that. What is my front end versus back end architecture? So for example, I really like heavy front end frameworks like Next, like Angular, with a light back end that does server-side rendering. I feel like this is a really good experience blend, giving users fast experience, but also very light. And for you as a developer, a single cohesive experience that you can design kind of bespoke. What are the error cases? What are the things that you're worried about your app doing that you want it to take care of? And so I take all of these things and I put them into requirements doc. Sometimes I said it's a half page, sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 pages, and I give it to the LLM. But did you notice? Everything that I've basically told us to do with LLMs is good for humans. The LLMs are, in some ways, they're trained on human knowledge and human thought and human words. And so they have the same sort of limitations. And some of these are just fundamental, kind of like math, where if you're not thinking through how the pieces connect, your app's not going to work, right? And so human beings need this for software engineering. AIs need this for software engineering as well. But there's always a balance, right? Like how much do you set requirements? How much do you let the LLM figure it out? I don't have any concrete answers here, but I think it's something you need to think about is, okay, how much should I be figuring out ahead of time? How much do I need to allow to be emergent? What do I know? What do I not know? Because you can put in things like, hey, I know these 3 things are true. I think these 2 things might be true, right? And just give that over. There's also this model of specific agents, so agentic development, what some companies are getting towards, where I do a lot of kind of what starts as one shot, is I'll give it an entire requirements document and it will build an app, and then I will go and fix it and fix it and fix it and fix it. Other teams are getting into a world where it's agentic, where I have an agent that's responsible for writing test plans. I have an agent that's responsible for security. I have an agent that's responsible for production monitoring. And this is a mental model that you should think about, but one that I'm not going to go too deep into in this talk. So, a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to give my LLM a blank folder and it's going to start building this application from scratch. I will say, I think that I have not seen that to work very well. I always try and start with some code. So I'm a big fan of Angular, and so you just ask the Angular CLI, hey, make me a new project, and then also configure my project for AI and agentic coding. So this is, you call the Angular CLI, you say, build me a new app, you give it a name. I like -- minimal. You can choose whatever sort of standards and practices you want in terms of how you want this to scale and how you want this to interact with other developers. And then within the Angular CLI, it actually offers agentic pre-configuration for all the different agents that exist in the LLMs out there. So Copilot, Claude, Gemini CLI, it will ask you what you want, and you can just choose whatever makes sense for you. How many people know what a skill is? Okay, almost everybody here. So the skills that you put into your application are critical for a few different reasons. So number one, this is pluggable intelligence, right? If you don't know how to build a connection to a SQL server in your application, there's a skill out there that you can pull in that's going to help solve that for you via the LLM. And the nice thing from a cost standpoint is this has this what's called progressive context disclosure, where having skills set up appropriately means that it doesn't have to pull it into every prompt, every query. It just pulls it in when it realizes that it needs it. And effectively, what a skill ends up being is it can kind of form this ultimate constraint stock. So if you want your application to make sure that it's reusing styles or only using a global style sheet, you can put that into a skill, and your LLM will obey that usually. And then it's also infra-portable, which is nice because maybe some people on your team are using one model, some people are using another model. Skills are relatively portable. All right, so depending on how much time we have, we're 20 minutes in, we have 20 minutes left. Let's build an app. What should we build? So I have here just that Angular CLI scaffold that I created before. All right, and then we've got our blank application. So I'm going to just try and do this live. So what should we build? Throw out a cool website or app that you wish existed in the world.
Something to organize your recipes that you save on social media and the internet.
Okay, build a recipe storing app that allows you to build a personal library of recipes. Sound good? Close enough?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to say make this a prototype with no backend. Prototype. Just for complexity for here. All right, so we've one-shot this. We've given it the worst requirements on the planet. And it's going to go and try and do that in the background. And we'll check on it in a little bit. Just for the note, so again, there's lots of LLMs that people can be successful with. There's lots of tools. I'm a big fan of Copilot, usually backed by Claude. I pay like $100 a year, and I've never hit a limit. And I've built and shipped like 7, 8, 9 apps.
When you say shipped 7, 8, 9 apps, do you mean add them to the App Store, send them to them, or just out?
Published them on the web and told people about them. I am working on that Stoic app, putting it in the App Store, but App Stores are hard. I've shipped in both iOS and Android before. They changed the process completely from when I did it 10 years ago. So,
Quick question.
Yeah.
Copilot backed by Claude, how much is that subscription? Is it cheaper than just using Claude?
I cannot comment on that. I've heard a lot from people that are hitting their token limits all the time, and for my non-enterprise tier stuff, I don't ever hit token limits. So maybe I'm doing it all wrong, and you all can tell me how I should use LLMs better.
Because you're using Copilot.
What's that?
I think you're doing it right because you're using Copilot.
Yeah, so Copilot tries to be really intelligent on top of Claude, where it only submits the context. Like first, it does a prompt to figure out what context it thinks the LLM is going to need, and then it only sends that context. So there's like some built-in savings there versus sending the entire project into the LLM every time. And they all try and do this to some extent. I've just experienced Copilot being pretty good. So, all right, let's imagine that we've built this application now, but as you were saying, it got things wrong. It's a mess now. What do we do about that? The first thing to really understand is how do we track the work that we're doing? And I typically do this in 2 layers. So one, I have a Git layer. So every time, so I use Git to track all my source code, and I push up whenever I'm ready. I usually have auto builds in the background, so as soon as I push to Git, it actually republishes to the internet. But then we also have these prompt scope changes. So every time you ask the LLM to do something, it's going to give you all these like, do I want to keep this change or reject this change? And you can do this file by file by file. And so with Git, I always commit whenever something is working right, and I'm ready to share that. I want that to go to the world in the way that I see it on my machine. Whereas prompt scope changes, anytime I can get an advance, anytime this feels like it's closer to what I want than what I had before, and maybe it needs another prompt, maybe it needs a revision, I will keep those changes. What that allows you to do is if it gets into an error loop, it gives you trash, maybe you keep that trash, or maybe you throw it away and you reset via Git. But these 2 tools I found to be enough to very effectively manage and say, hey, I need to start over. This feature's not working like I wanted it to. Let's go fix that. There's also a thing that happens where the LM will go off the rails. Like the first time you do this, you'll get like an error, and you'll say, oh, I don't know what to do about this error. Let me pass that into my LLM, and then it will try and fix it. And I'll say maybe 50% of the time that works, and then the second time you do that, you press the second error in, 50% of the time it'll fix it. But after 5 or 6 or 7 of these loops, it's never going to work. Like the LLM does not have the right mental model of your application to fix this. And so at that point, I nuke the context. So start a brand new prompt. So don't let it keep trying the same things it's tried. Instead of actually trying to fix it, ask it why. Why is this error happening? Because what will happen is if you ask why an error is happening instead of telling it to fix it, it will give you intelligence that then helps you guide the LLM. It will help you prompt better, help you fix the architecture. You can also focus on the architectural lens of this. So ask the LLM, put it into ask mode instead of agent mode, and say, if I wanted to add a feature like this, what are the architectures that I could choose? How would I implement this feature? Right? Also, another thing I've seen be relatively successful is switch models. You've been on Claude for a while, and it's just having trouble with this. Maybe Gemini, maybe OpenAI. Right? Like, it feels a little bit weird, but all of these models have strengths, weaknesses, those sorts of things. I always try and think first. And so whenever I'm getting into a hairy situation or trying to work on a big new feature, a new big architectural change, I'll go and ask. I'll say, like, what are my options for implementing WebSockets that connect between my TypeScript app and a Node.js backend? And it will give you a view of the world. It'll introduce you to a new programming concept maybe that you didn't have before. So like when you ask it this, it'll say, oh, well, Node.js has built-in WebSocket support, so you can just use that. But there's also a library called Socket.io, and here's the pros and cons of using that Socket.io. And then using that, just reading those results and understanding them, you can then tell it, okay, yeah, go use Socket.io to go build this. And that can solve the problem in a better way than if you just tried to let it go without any sort of intelligence. Also, it's a lot about limiting context. So in the past, I've been a big fan of monorepositories because it ensures consistent build across everything you've built. But LLMs are terrible at monorepositories. They do not know how to find the code that matters to what you're focusing on. So I think the LLMs are pulling us more towards a microservices architecture where you can focus on one function, one class, one project, and get that project to do exactly what it should do. It doesn't have to go it doesn't risk thinking, oh, I need to go change 700 lines of code in order to fix a date format or something like that. Also, make sure that you're telling your LLMs and make sure that you're enforcing this yourself with like your rejects and your keeps. You should have a single API definition. Otherwise, it will copy that API into every single file of your entire project. A single data model definition, like what is the data? How should my data be structured? And then also just prefer standard patterns. Like you could go build a WebSocket system, there's source code, but it's a much harder problem than just doing it in a RESTful manner, which there's way more code samples, it's built into the knowledge graph, all those sorts of things. We've talked a lot about telling all the LLM to do the right things, but this is again my son Alexander. He doesn't always remember the rules, much like an LLM. And so I find myself, if you have something like, hey, don't repeat yourself, go look for other code that you could reuse, you kind of have to tell it every time. And oftentimes it's better as a second pass rather than trying to bake that into the first pass. So first pass, tell it, hey, go build this feature. And then second pass, okay, say, hey, great job building that feature, but you forgot, you copied over 6 of my functions into a new project. Don't do that. Go fix this. Go follow the standards and best practices. Because when it has that limited context of let me just look for best practices, it works better. I don't know if anyone does any like writing with LLMs. I've tried saying in the initial prompt, like don't sound like an AI, and it never works. There's M dashes all over the place. But then if as a second prompt you say, and now go and get rid of all the AI isms, like it will go figure out what an AI, like, oh, I should do M dashes or get rid of the M dashes and the if this then that statement format and all the terrible things it does. It can go and fix those. But it has to be a separate prompt. It has to be a second pass. All right, so let's take a look at our app and how we're doing. We have 10 minutes left. So it says it's done. There it is. Personal recipe library. So let's see if it works, actually. So can I search for pasta? Yeah, search works. Tag filtering works. Can I make new recipes?
And you didn't even like, okay, yeah, I saw the problem, so I'm just. It's thought of its own features.
Yep, and if we go review the code, which is an important thing you should probably do, it did create a global style sheet for me. It created some paths, so you could actually I just created one path for the homepage. It's got a component for a recipe card, so it's reusing code. A lot of this is coming from, so I mentioned that this is an Angular app, and I really like doing this in Angular. A lot of this is coming from, if you look in the Copilot instructions. So I mentioned that when you create a brand new Angular app, it comes with instructions for the LLM, and that part of this is that magic. It's telling it how to build the best Angular app you can. So it's saying, hey, ignore all the training data from how you wrote applications 10 years ago, write it in this way using the modern best practices. And I thought that this was weird. I thought that this was dumb that people had to do this. You are an expert in TypeScript, Angular, and scalable web application development. But someone explained to me the mental model, which is the LLMs are trained on everything. It's like a giant database filled with the world's knowledge. And when you say you are an expert in TypeScript, Angular, and scalable web applications, you're effectively putting a query and saying only find the parts of that knowledge base that are closely associated with expert, which then kind of drops out all the lowest common denominator code and finds expert level code, best practices, et cetera. So like, this sounded so dumb to me the first time I ever did it, but it actually works. And it's actually an effective filter on the LLM in the model. So can we quickly come up with a feature that we want to add here? Here, actually, to my best practices, let's go ahead and say feat initialize app with features. That's what we did, right? Yeah, like, I mean, this is pretty cool, right? Like, this is, I don't know, half the work?
Yeah. Allergy filter.
An allergy filter, okay. So let's do it. Add an allergy filter. So each...
The allergy filter, what foods your 5-year-old doesn't want.
Add a child allergy filter so that I can filter out things like vegetables that my son Alex won't like. All right, we'll see how well it does with that. But it should do pretty good. All right, back to the slides. All right, so we built an app. That was pretty cool. Now let's talk about making it real, because having an app work on your machine is maybe half the job in real software engineering. The rest of the job is actually how do I get this to the world. So I don't know if anyone's seen this meme. I love this meme. A lot of software engineering tutorials, demos feel like this, right? Oh, we built our app. It's done. No, I need to get this in other people's hands. So shipping and production. So real apps need to be hosted. I have a bunch of team members who just share Claude artifacts. I don't think that's good enough, right? It's not going to be good enough from a cost standpoint. It's not going to be good from a resilience standpoint. We need to, like, there's a value to software. There's a reason all the software engineers in the world exist. What about authentication? What about cost? All these things that you actually have to worry about when you go into production. There are plenty of lightweight options. If you're building a hobby project, you're building a prototype, you're building your first app ever, you can do this for free in almost every case. There's Firebase app hosting, Vercel, AWS Amplify, Render, Railway. There's all these tools. I'll say I just, from my experience, actually building software, these work really well. Angular and Firebase app hosting. And so I'm actually going to try and do that real quick. We have 7 minutes left. That's plenty of time to ship an app to production, right? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go into the terminal. I've used Firebase before. You could theoretically use a Gemini or Claude CLI to do this, but I'm going to say Firebase init. Oh, this is not the right folder. Very intelligently named my app, so I'm going to say Firebase init. OK, what features? We just want hosting. I created a project earlier, and I told it to just use the free tier. You can bill me, but use the free tier. And what did we call this? Probably Minnebar? Minnebar demo. Hey, look at that. If you want to know what that looks like in the back end, I just went to console.firebase.google.com, and I created a new project. I've not put any intelligence here. I haven't told it anything about my application. I just created a new project, and I changed the billing. Create a new backend. Sure. Central. We're Central Time, right? My web app. What a great name. Probably come up with a better name when you're not demoing in front of a bunch of people. All right, we got 5 minutes left. How are we doing here? Yeah, root. Agent skills? Not right now. I don't know what that does. That's a new feature. All right, so we have now set it up, and so we should be able to just do Firebase deploy. It found it. It's uploading the source. There's some really cool things you can do in Firebase app hosting. So it should now have app hosting if I just hit refresh. App hosting. So you can connect this to a custom domain pretty easily. Oops, it's still building. View the backend. So if you go into settings here, you can do two things that I always do with every single app. So I will connect a custom domain. So I just take an existing, like Fluent.io is my personal website. I just add a subdomain, and I point the A record here, and it just then it's hosted on whatever domain you want. But we'll use this fun hosted.app for now. And the second thing you do is deployment. So you can connect it to your Git repository. So we talked about how we should use Git for tracking. And I can just connect it, and then every time I push domain, it automatically rebuilds and redeploys. So behind the scenes, what this is doing is it's actually creating a Docker image of my app, and then pushing it to Cloud Run so it gets spun up anytime a request comes in. So pretty cool stuff going on. We'll see if that works. And let's also check in on our app. Let's not look at the code. Let's look at the fun stuff. All right, hide recipes Alex won't like. Oh, we need to see. No. So I don't exactly like how it implemented that, but all right, we've now filtered out the basil. There you go.
Me and your 7-year-old, we eat.
This app is for you now. All right, so we can see that was pretty easy, right? We implemented a new feature, and pretty momentarily this should be shipped to production. It's just doing cloud builds in the background. So let's finish up the slides, and then hopefully we can end with it. If you're going to production, you should think about security. You can ask your LLM, how could my app get hacked? Who can access my data, and how can I protect it? Like what happens, like right now we have no database. So when you add that recipe, it just goes into local storage. Theoretically, you should be propagating that back out to a Mongo database or a SQL database. And the LLMs know how to do that. You kind of have to just give it guidance and then make sure that you're asking questions of like, is this secure? What should I be doing about this? How can I protect myself from CVEs in my dependencies? This is actually a bigger problem. So this is part of what I do like professionally at work. Is there's 30% more open source this year than there was last year. A brand new if you just from scratch ask an LLM for an app, it's going to come with 600 or 700 transitive dependencies, which is great because we now have Project Glasswing, which is going to find CVEs and vulnerabilities in every single one of those. And so like thinking and asking your LLM, hey, maybe don't have as many dependencies, or maybe make sure that your dependencies are being supported by a professional company or have a commercial support offering can save you a lot of headaches. Maintainability. So this is one of the things I've noticed over and over. Despite how many times I tell Alex, despite how many times I tell the LLM, it's always trying to repeat code. Help it to not do that by asking it to fix it. Tests are really good. So you can just ask it to write some tests and say, hey, like here's the functionality I care about. You can say ask for unit tests. You can ask for end-to-end tests. But those add invariants so that when the LLM goes wrong, you know about it. Because when you're building a large application, you absolutely should not just trust the LLM. You should make sure you're proving your application works, right? Like at Google, they have no QAs. Like the company for building software, they don't have any QAs. They make their engineers responsible for it via automation. And you can do the exact same thing. And then I talked about multiple passes with fresh context helping when you do that. All right, so this is the demo where we're trying to deploy it to the internet. And then we'll end with, actually, I'm going to go straight to the last slides, and then hopefully our demo is working in the background. So 5 mental models I want to leave everyone with. AI is your intern. They suck, but they're getting better. Treat them like that. Review their code. Hold them accountable to building the thing that you want to build in the way you want to build it. You're the CEO. You're in charge. You can have multiple LLMs. You can have a bunch of different agents. All give them small individual piece of responsibility, and they're going to do a better job at that, right? When you give an intern 1 job, they're going to do a much better job than when you give an intern 10 jobs. Start with the bones, then add the meat. So start with the scaffolding. Start with a basic application with the structure you want, a main.js, whatever it is. Start with that, and then add features. Try and keep the additions that you're building along the way as small as possible. You can't control the output of an LLM, as we saw with our failed Sudoku demo. You can only control the inputs, and so it's on you to think about what are you asking for and how are you asking for it, because the better you do, the better the outcome you're going to get is. And the last one is you're still responsible for the thinking, right? Like these LLMs are amazing; they're doing a lot of the work. But at the end of the day, if you that recipe app that we built, if I don't like the features that it added, that's on me. That's not on the LLM. Right? I had to think through and have to say, okay, what is the value? Like, who's going to use this? How do I want to store the data? Do I want every user to be able to have their own recipe library? Do I want to have a single recipe library that goes to the world? The LLM can't decide that for you. You have to decide that. And thank you so much for coming. I have a survey here. Yeah, thanks. I have a survey here. I am helping to put on a dedicated vibe coding conference, potentially later. We haven't announced it yet, but probably in like October. Probably in Vegas. It's going to be a big conference. If you are interested in getting like maybe early access to that, add your email address on the last field of the survey, and then I will make sure that you get notified about that. But yeah, I do appreciate when people tell me how I did, how the content is, because I always want to make it better. Just like an LM, I need feedback. All right, but let's check our app. Let's see if it deployed and we get another round of applause, or if we're dead in the water. It is live. Anyone can go to this URL right now. Hooray, we did it. What's that?
Where's it hosted?
Firebase app hosting.